Okay, we were talking about the dodge tool, and that's where we left off in part one. The dodge tool lightens parts of the pixels, and the way that you can tell what it's actually going to lighten is up in the options bar. You can choose the kind of brush that you want. Again, sometimes you want a very fine, detailed brush, and then sometimes you want a soft one. I think I'm going to actually get a harder brush, 100% hardness, and just go ahead and turn that down a little bit. About 80, 83%, 80%. The brush is pretty large, and I want to come in on the white area of her eye, so I'm going to shrink that down with the left bracket next to the letter P, and pop in here. And I don't want to do too much. I'm analyzing that a bit, and I might undo the dodge and just turn our exposure down, because I think it's better to build that up. You don't want to make the whites of someone's eyes too white. So I'm just going to turn that down. Also, as we left off, make sure that when you work, you're on your background layer, that it's targeted, because that's the photo layer, and we want to lighten it. I'm just going to do a little of that, a bit. And I always like to check that. So Command 0 or Control 0 lets me look at that on screen. Looks pretty good. And Control or Command plus, space bar lets you move around in your image. And I like that. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to do the other side. Now, maybe not so close. And I'll now have that set for painting. Things like that allow you to just get the lightening how you want it. Now up here, just quickly, if you look at the options in the dodge tool, what's really nice is you do have a range, and in this case midtones worked very well in these sections. But what's really nice is that if you only want to lighten the shadow areas, you can choose shadows, and then also if you only want to lighten highlights, then choose highlights. This time I think I'll choose highlights and come in, largen the brush, make sure the exposure's turned down, and just pop in on her teeth. I don't want to go crazy. I don't want her teeth to look overly lightened, and I just want them to be a little lighter, a little more natural. And I don't like that, so I'll undo that second portion and leave those teeth alone. They're sort of in the shade. A little of that can be nice. And we also do this in photo correction. So when you lighten, if you find what it's doing is bringing out the saturation, or it's bringing out color like this, you can always go back to the sponge tool and make sure your mode is desaturate. And that'll take something closer to grayscale, which if you don't want the yellow, just pop in some of those areas and it will take out any garish looking colors that you may not find distasteful. Okay, that's good. And now I'm ready to paint again. I'm going to click back on the layer for the painting, that's important, and then come back to the brush and carry on. So again, I'm just option, sampling, and then painting with the color that was optioned. Option. And so on. Like this. Capture the highlight and paint that section. Option click. Make the brush a little bigger. And carry on this side. Option click. Option click. Option and click. Now I'm undoing, when I don't like something, I am undoing, and I'm using the shortcuts right here. So Command Z or Control Z I use a lot. If I don't like a stroke, I just Command Z it. I think of zapping it, but whatever helps you remember those shortcuts. Option click, and you just keep going like that. Now I might not work the details in this time. It may be I create another layer above this for this kind of detail. And if I wanted to do that, I would just turn this painting layer off, create a new layer, and work the details in on a new layer above this one. But that's later, and even if you can just get as far as an overall painting exploration, that's great. You can also zoom in and detail out. Command plus, space bar. If you want, we could detail out these. Make a smaller brush. Option click. A lot smaller. We don't want her to look over wrinkled, and probably she might not even want those in there. I personally like the characteristics of people's faces, including wrinkles. I think they're really beautiful, but that is again up to the painter and the client. I'm getting all of this sort of in here. And again, when you zoom in, you really can, you can capture the detail. I was checking the opacity because right now I want to work at 100% opacity. And so I just wanted to make sure that's what I had. Then I'll blend all of this in. It looks all like different. Turn off the background. Looks like a lot of different tones, which I like. I like that look because then I go back to the smudge tool and I've already got my strength, kind of blend that. Now while we're looking at the smudge tool, there is this thing called finger painting, this area that you can check. If you check that, what it will do is pick up on a little bit of the foreground color depending on the strength. So my strength is lower, so I'm just going to get a little bit. I don't want a whole lot, but just to show you what that does, I need to turn on the face again. That'll pick up on what we have here, and it'll give you just a touch of this usually. Let's take a look. Turn that up a little bit. So you're both smudging and adding color, and that can be really a nice way to go, just depending. And I'm just looking at all of the highlighted areas here. I'm going to turn up the strength and do that a little bit more. So you're both blending and adding color. I'll come back to the paintbrush. Option click and kind of work in the side of her face here and continue to vary it as the colors change. And a great way to learn about painting is really to do a Google search on the list of artists that are in your handout, just because there are so many styles to work with, and this is just in terms of the way that painters work, so many different ways to work. Andy Warhol does it one way in his silk screens. Impressionist painters do it another way in their work in the late 1800s. And the Fauves explore color. So they'd probably be painting these tones, maybe even in teal or green or blue to express the feeling or the mood of the person. And that's fun too. If you're interested in that, look up the Fauve artists. That's F as in Frank, A, U, V as in Victor, E in a Google search, you'll see these brightly colored paintings where the mountain isn't the color it should, or that we normally see it as. It might be bright red, and that's to express the emotion from the painter's perspective. So I'm getting in here. It's really fun, having a good time, and I hope that you will also. But don't be surprised when you look and notice, oh my gosh, not a lot looks like it's happening. It just takes a lot of time. And just keep going. And also you can blend. Go back to the smudge tool and blend these tones. Now I've added in that smudge tool that finger painting. I'm going to turn that off now. And also I have that simple soft brush. Feel free to explore that. You might want to try some other experiments. I'm going to turn the strength down. That's the problem. That when you blend at 100%, you're really moving your pixels. That's what's happening in smudging. And if you turn it down, it's really nice. It just sort of gives it a soft blend. Now, the mixer brush, and go look at your tutorials because there are some really good sections in those video tutorials on the mixer brush. I'm not going to do that here today, but your mixer brush is located in that on the fourth row down, and this is the mixer brush. And the mixer brush is just really great because what it does is it allows you to choose the kind of canvas you have. Do you want to start with a wet canvas as though the paint is already gooey? And how much paint do you want to load on your brush? And then what amount do you want to mix between those two? So this can also be absolutely wonderful to work with, and the tutorials are great, so go ahead and watch those. And you're welcome to work with the mixer brush entirely in your painting. So these are just some of the ways to work. And as you go, you'll find it slowly starts to be your image is really coming together. Let me get out of this tool, making a mistake. Let me get back to the brush tool, option click, and paint. So one way to go, and this is probably one of the easier ways because you're not having to create the color yourself. You're able to option click and sample the color and then just paint with it. So it's a really fun tool if you're wanting to explore just how you stroke, what your brush strokes look like. Artists like Van Gogh, and you might look up Van Gogh, his show was wonderful at the Denver Art Museum, but you might examine artists like that because they really have so much movement in their brush strokes. And just keep cooking until you are starting to really like the result, and it just takes time. Now I'm up close, so this is going to be very detailed. It doesn't look like it now, but when you zoom in and you work with a small brush, you're capturing every bit of detail, and that's going to look more photographic. So, that's just one way to go. If you zoom out, Command Control minus. Control is for the PC. Then you can start to see what's happening. Let's see. It doesn't look like much. Keep on going. And I think working at 100% in your painting may move this a little bit faster. But some students and artists will work with a really large brush because they want to break up their shapes in bigger sections, and feel free to explore that. Option. You might want to just express a value in that manner. Option click. And so on. If you're just not afraid of trying and exploring, and also coming up with a disaster, which can happen, then makes it a lot more fun to try and to learn from this. Keep going, and that's really our goal here, is to just practice the painting, getting used to the brushes, and